Welcome to Spatial Signals. It's a podcast about remote sensing and geographic information systems, but more importantly, the people behind them. I'm your co-host, Dr. Brad Shellito, and with me today is your other co-host, coming to us from his pirate radio station in the living room of Butch Cassidy's childhood home in Panguitch, Mr. Chris McGinty. Chris, how is a sunny day in Utah treating you today?
I want you to say the name of that town one more time. Let's see.
Panguitch?
Yeah, you're not from Utah, but
nope,
we'll forgive you. But it's Panguitch, but you know.
Panguitch.
Yeah, sorry.
My apologies to all of the inhabitants of Butch Cassidy's childhood home in Panguitch.
Well, you tracked me down. It's a beautiful, beautiful sunny day in Utah, so I can't complain. How are you doing?
Oh, just kicking back. Gonna hit the pool a little later today. You know, maybe work on my golf game here in summer. You know, it's because that's what professors do all summer long. You know,
you just golf,
relax,
yes,
kick back.
It's because
golf,
you make all the big money. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Make the big bucks for 9 months, and then you just get 3 months of pure
do
relaxation.
nothing for 3
it's
months. Yeah.
Wonderful. Yes.
Now the secret's out.
I know. Now everybody's gonna want to be in on this.
That's right.
Well, for those of you just joining us, this podcast is sponsored by AmericaView, the National Geospatial and Remote Sensing Network, which is dedicated to empowering Earth observation. Now, AmericaView has been around since 2003 and has grown from a program in the state of Ohio to a network of programs stretching across the United States, working with remote sensing, GIS, and geospatial technologies in all forms of outreach, research, and education. But before I introduce today's two very special guests, I'm going to kick things back to Chris, who, as always, has a little bit of the news for us.
Thanks, Brad. I had a hard time deciding today because there's so much happening in the world of EO and remote sensing. And so it was this toss up between AI foundation models, which didn't sound nearly as exciting as talking about oysters. And so
I will always go with the oysters over AI foundation models.
Yeah, right. Not all.
Tell
of
me
our
about the
listeners
oysters,
are
Chris.
Quite as excited, but you know, there's an article out that we'll link to in the show notes. So make sure you go check those out for not just the links to this, but some great pictures from our guests that we'll have there as well. But so this whole talk about oyster farming, and there's a lot of discussion about this, and this is a really important topic in Maine, of course. And this last year we've welcomed Maine into the AmericaView organization. We're super excited to have them, and we've done a podcast with those fine folks. But I wanted to just kind of point out this really neat application of both Sentinel and Landsat data that the University of Maine has been working with through the Maine Sea Grant program, and it's really using both Landsat and Sentinel to support aquaculture along the Maine coast, which is one of their next to forestry, one of their biggest industries within the state. And so it's really neat how they're using the satellite data to help oyster farmers understand water conditions. They're looking at water currents. They're looking at algal blooms. They're looking at overall health and harvest timing. And the other thing that they're looking at is sea surface temperature, which, as we know, is changing. It changes all the time, but changing over the long term as well. And so using local monitoring and even some citizen science to track temperature variability in estuaries and nearshore waters, and all of this other, really great stuff, capturing all these EO measurements, putting them together, and then providing real-time or near real-time information for folks to really, I say folks, and I'm talking about the farmers and the folks to go out and actually do a lot of this, implement some of these programs and be able to identify, best harvesting time, when they should be out on the water, when they should be addressing certain conditions. So a really cool application of EO. It's just so incredibly broad, everything that people within Earth observation, remote sensing do. And so we'll provide some links to that, Brad. It's a neat application, might pique the interest of people who are interested in aquaculture or oysters.
And oysters, yes. Especially here in the summer.
You bet. Perfect.
Well, thanks very much. Again, like Chris said, we'll be putting links to that in our show notes, which are over on our Substack. So head on over there. And when you get back, we are here to introduce our two very special guests today. You have heard both of them on the show before, so if you want to hear their stories, go back into our archive. But it is my pleasure to introduce, first off, Kass Green of Kass Green and Associates. Kass, thank you again for coming back here on the show.
Thanks for the invitation. I really appreciate it.
And our other special guest, the other half of this dynamic duo, is Dr. Russ Congalton from the University of New Hampshire. Russ, thanks again for coming back.
Sure, glad to be here.
Well, as our listeners may know from listening to both of your individual episodes, not only have both of you had very storied careers individually on your own, but you've done a lot of work together. I know Russ has mentioned Kass, some of the work they've done together on his episode. I know Kass described some of the work that you guys have done together, which is why we really want to have both of you here to hear this whole story, which I know goes back quite a long ways up to the present day. And I understand both of you are there together in California as we record, which is great to have you both in the same room rather than on different parts of the internet.
Yep, we're here sitting right next to each other.
Yep.
Oh, excellent. Well, so the first thing we wanted to ask is, if our listeners have heard your individual episodes, they kind of know where both of you are coming from. But how did the whole combination of this Russ and Kass excellent adventure get started?
Let's see. We were pointing at each other to start.
I think there may be two different versions of this story,
Yeah,
so we'll hear both of them here.
Well, the first time I ever met Russ, I was trying to track down one of his graduate students who was actually working for me. And so I was in at the university, in a university building, and Russ said, "Can I help you?" And I'm like, "Who are you?" Because I hadn't met him
Like,
yet.
go away.
Yeah. And so I was rude. But then we met later, primarily for me, I think, at GIS 87, which was the first nationwide conference on GIS. It was a very small conference, only 600 people. And Russ was kind enough, I knew nothing about GIS or remote sensing, and Russ was kind enough to take me through the exhibit hall, which was very small, and introduce to different types of softwares. And just for the whole 3 days of that conference, I think there was 3 days, he just was a guiding force. I felt I was like a fish out of water. And Russ was so kind in just teaching me remote sensing and GIS. And that was the beginning of my education.
Wow, that's great. And Russ, so you guys were there at this at the conference here in 1987, walking around the exhibit hall, pointing things out. How did things grow from there? From just sort of introducing Kass to what's happening there at the exhibit hall and GIS and remote sensing, into starting to work together.
Yeah, so actually the conference where Kass was just talking about was actually the first GIS conference, which was in 1985 or maybe early 1986.
You're right. I just had it wrong.
Okay.
And so I was pretty much a brand new assistant professor at Berkeley, but there was a whole bunch of people at that conference that were either Berkeley grads or still were at Berkeley. And so we all grabbed a cab and went down to, this was in Atlanta, and we went down to a Benihana's restaurant, and we were all sitting there, and they're all, I didn't know most of them, but they were really nice to include me. And they said, "Who's missing?" And they said, "Kass Green is missing." And I said, "Okay, I'll go call her." I only had met her once. And so I got
Despite her being rude to you, yes.
Yeah, I got on the payphone and I called her at the hotel and said, "All of your friends are down at Benihana's and they insist that you get here. I will wait outside for you. Take a cab and get here now." And so she did.
I was in the middle of writing a proposal. So I was going to eat in my room because I was writing a proposal. But Russ talked me into coming to dinner, which was fun.
Benihana's sounded much better than eating alone in your room.
That's it. Yeah. And so at that conference, my major professor, who left a year into my PhD, invited me to sit at the head table of the banquet. He was very big into banquets, Roy Mead. And so he introduced all the supposed celebrities at the head table. I had no idea why I was sitting there. And he introduced me as one of his students and then said, "And Russ is going to lead the new GIS conference in San Francisco next year." He had never asked me anything about that.
Just sort of announced at a Benihana's.
Yes.
No, this was at the conference.
This was at the conference.
In front of like 300 people.
Yeah.
So I went back.
Did you kind of look around at everybody and be like, "Who's Russ Congalton?"
That's it. Nobody knew who I was. So I went back here and I was part of the Northern California ASPRS, and I went to the group and I said, "Are you guys interested in doing this?" And so we always met at Hammond, Jensen & Whan, which is where Kass worked, and Pacific Meridian, Pacific Aerial Surveys, which was where Mike Renslow was, and they were joint companies. And we always met there for our ASPRS meetings. So I talked to all those guys. So Kass volunteered to help, Mike volunteered to help, Alan McCooney, a whole bunch of big shots in Northern California. And so we started putting together this conference where we thought, maybe maybe 800 people would show up, but 1,400 people came.
Wow.
It was overwhelming. Kass was in charge of registration. So we met like weekly for almost a year. So we got to know each other then. And then there was this opportunity for mapping of old growth forest in Oregon and Washington. Right?
It was Okanagan and Wenatchee.
Oh, just
that
Okanagan.
was the first one.
All right, yeah. So there was a proposal to do some mapping. And so Kass and some other cohorts from her company, the Hammond Jensen Awan, and then she invited me to be part of that. So that's how we actually became official together. So,
and that was on working with getting contract work to do Landsat for mapping forests then?
Yeah, it was one of the first true commercial applications of Landsat data. Lots of universities have been using Landsat, but this was the Forest Service, and they had a very innovative guy up in Region 6 in Washington. And he put out this RFP to first use Landsat data to map forest types on the Okanagan National Forest. And we won that contract. And my firm totally couldn't believe that I just pulled in this contract. I didn't know what I was doing at all. So I needed Russ. I couldn't have done it without him. And so we started that contract. Then we got an add-on for the Wenatchee and Colville National Forests. And right in the middle of the Okanagan job, or a little bit farther on, after the first year of the Okanagan job, the chief of the Forest Service went in front of Congress. He was testifying, and they asked him how much old growth there was in the Pacific Northwest. And he said he didn't know. And they said that was an unacceptable answer. So the Forest Service turned to us and said, well, how about you also map all the old growth in Western Oregon and Washington? So the chief doesn't get stuck with that, not being able to answer a question. And they gave us a sole source cost plus, I think it was a $4 million contract. We were an 8-person firm.
Wow.
We quickly grew to 25. And of course, Russ was involved in all of those. So that meant Russ and I ended up driving all over the Pacific Northwest together. Of course, we had a team out there collecting data, but Russ and I we drove all the way from like Colville to Portland one day.
Yeah. We were kind of driving.
And just doing, the field work for the project. But we had multiple teams out doing that too. But that really kicked off Pacific Meridian. It was an incredible gift to have a contract, sole source cost plus contract of that magnitude. And that was incredible. And so Russ was an integral part of that, all the methods development. It was really fun because we would work together, and I always had these practical ideas. I had a bottom line to meet, and Russ always had these new technologies that we would bring in and that we would try and that would make us more efficient. So it was that great partnership, where we both brought strengths and also had a lot of fun.
We pick on each other. We really love each other.
Yep.
And we're not afraid to say anything to each other.
This is true.
It worked out really well.
It's a great friendship. Yeah, Russ and his wife are staying in Russ Congalton's bedroom in our house right now.
So this is sort of this Hotel California situation here with the Russ Congalton bedroom.
More than you know. So, yeah. People come up to me at conferences and say, I stayed in your bedroom at Kass and Jean's house.
It's true.
And I say, it's okay. You can stay there, but just remember, it's my bedroom.
You can check in anytime you like, but you can never leave, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. And then, eventually I left Berkeley and moved to New Hampshire. And when I did that, when I was here, right? So it was easy for them to get a hold of me and, but when I moved to New Hampshire, it was like, okay, well, we got to make this more formal. So all of a sudden I became the chief scientist, and then I would come out a couple of times a year. We would do conferences together. We always did both ASPRS conferences. We taught workshops together constantly, which, we have such different personalities. Back in the old days, you had slide carousel I'd have my slides all set. I'd get up there and I'd talk. And while I was talking, Kass was rearranging her slides depending on how I said something to make the point she wanted to make. It was always interesting to see whether she had all her slides in order by the time I finished speaking.
Always were.
They always were. And so it was really kind of funny. So, but yeah, and it was such a great marketing thing. I mean, all the accuracy assessment that we did, we taught, how to do land cover mapping. We taught how to do, thematic accuracy assessment and worked the booth. So that's why I'm good at the America View booth, because I did the Pacific Meridian booth forever.
The accuracy assessment is one I wanted to ask about, because I know that you'd made a note that said that, the Pacific Meridian was successful for a lot of reasons, but a big one was that you always did a map accuracy assessment. And how did that play into everything that you guys were doing?
Russ wouldn't let me put in a proposal if it didn't include accuracy assessment. So we always included it. It was really important because at that point, people weren't doing quantitative accuracy assessment. And Russ really introduced that whole concept to remote sensing. And the fact that, we were trying to build a whole industry off of using, satellite imagery to map land use and land cover. And lots of people just didn't trust it at all. So the accuracy assessment gave legitimacy to what we were doing. And so, at that, nobody believed in satellite imagery when we started at all. And then Chernobyl happened, and there were spot images of the Chernobyl explosion. And all of a sudden, people thought you could do everything with remote sensing. But before that, it was a real hard push to get people to accept, because we were able to make the maps for so much less money, and they were so much more consistent than the old manual approaches. And so, we knew we had a better product that was, better for lots of reasons. But to get people to actually believe in that product was hard. So accuracy assessment was critical. Really critical in that.
I think it separated our proposal from everybody else's proposal. And even if somebody else put something in there, typically they really didn't know what they were doing. And so often it would cost them 3/4 of their budget to do their accuracy assessment, which Kass's background is in resource economics. And she was never going to let me spend 3/4 of the budget on accuracy assessment. So yeah, I think it gave us a competitive edge that other groups didn't have.
So I have to ask, and then Brad can get back to a couple other questions. But did you, Kass, did you ever make the mistake of saying ground truth in front of Russ?
Okay. God, no. Are you kidding me? I kill
Just
people
checking.
that do that too. I'm just like Russ. There's no such thing as ground truth.
I cringe when people say it. And it's said all the time. But when I was editor-in-chief of Photometric Engineering and Remote Sensing, I tried to make sure for those 8 years the word ground truth wasn't in any P&RS paper. But people still say it all the time.
So that, I don't know if you guys have read that or seen the accuracy assessment book, but there's a whole thing in there about Plato's shadows on the wall and how there is no real truth. There's just people's perception of truth.
Right.
So we put that, into the accuracy assessment book so people would understand that there's fuzziness around truth.
Also, speaking of books, I understand that you guys have written a couple of books together, including the Imagery and GIS, that I know that I've been using in my own remote sensing class for years now. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how the notion of just like, hey, what we should do next is write a book together. How did that all come about? And then how did the actual writing happen?
We had already written the accuracy assessment book, and I think even the second edition by then.
Yes.
Yes.
So we had already written books together, so we knew how to do that. And what happened actually is Lori Jordan of ESRI called one day and said, we'd like to consider having you author a book on remote sensing. And it was right when I was trying to retire for the second time. And I was like, oh, wow, that would be a real capstone of my career. That would be wonderful, but I can't do this alone. I've got to do it with Russ. And then Russ and I started to work together and think about it. And then we realized we probably needed somebody younger to join us. So we asked Mark Tuckman to join us.
Yeah, that was a fun book to write. And then the accuracy book, the first edition came out in 1999, but Dr. John Lyon, who was civil engineering remote sensing professor at Ohio State, had a really nice relationship with an editor from a small little book company called Lewis Press. And John had written a couple of books, and he was like, you got to write up all your accuracy stuff. You've done so many papers on it. We need to put it together. And all the work you're doing with Pacific Meridian, people need to have this, kind of handbook. And so, I asked Kass if she wanted to write it together. And so we did write that first edition, which, I always tell people, everything I knew, it was in 135 pages, whereas most professors write this, 600-page document or whatever. But it's grown over time. We learned a lot from 1999 to 2009. And so it got to about 200 and some pages. And then the third edition we struggled through, and we added a lot more about positional accuracy in there. So
polygon.
And polygons and fuzzy accuracy assessment. And that's at like 330 pages. Our editor asked us to write the fourth edition, but we said no.
Yeah, we did fine.
So there won't be a fourth edition unless they add another author or something, because we're not writing another book.
Well, so speaking a little bit of the writing and leading the industry and developing the industry, I'm really interested in you guys incorporated CART analysis into mapping before anybody else, and introduced that to USGS and NLCD. But I'm curious how, when we're talking about this accuracy assessments and then just analysis of the data and developing these land cover maps, how did CART find its way into your guys' work?
CART, actually, the idea of using CART came from USGS.
It did come from USGS. Okay.
We were mapping. We got much of the early NLDC land cover.
NRLC.
Yeah.
And
contracts. Anyway,
NLCD.
The first NLCD, Pacific Meridian mapped a third of the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And we were working with USGS on methods. And who was the guy? Do you remember?
No.
One of the guys came in from USGS and said, we just discovered this classification and regression tree. And Russ and I, we were in Portland, and we ran out to Powell's books and got books on CART.
And found C5 out of Australia.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's when we started using it, and it's become now I think Mark's using Random Forest, and then he's just totally into AI now. But so that's what happens with Russ and I. There'll be either one of us will get an idea or somebody else will get an idea, and then we'll expand on it. And that really worked wonderfully.
So we were always trying to get more efficient and get higher accuracy. And Kass is a maniac when it comes to looking at the error matrix and trying to find out why things are on the off diagonal, why there's confusion between category A and category B. And I had a Fulbright scholar from Spain, and we started looking at how we could combine supervised and unsupervised classification together. And that was probably the precursor to CART, where we were kind of doing a clustering and a supervised classification. And Pacific Meridian called it cluster magic, although I don't know sure that was the appropriate name for it. But John Jensen had his cluster busting. All these academics had these things, and we tried that, and then we found CART, and then what I think is the coolest thing is that we were so clear from the forestry stuff we were doing that we needed polygons or objects or segments, and we actually came up with like this 4-step process. We're using all kinds of different software to make polygons.
The polygons after the map was created, not before.
And then we were at some meeting where we found ecognition.
Andrew found ecognition.
And we were like, oh my goodness, why didn't we find this 2 years ago? Because that's what we were pushing. We were trying to get so hard to get there.
Yeah.
So, and that was so much fun for me because one, I got to work with industry, so I got to know what people wanted so I could train my students at the university properly. But two, the things that we were kind of pushing the envelope at the university, I could write to Pacific Meridian. So it was like, mutual admiration society back and forth. It worked out great.
But the wonderful thing about CART is that it brought non-imagery data into image classification.
Right.
So we were able to begin to mimic more what photo interpreters had been doing for years. So we had, with color and intensity, that, you get that from the imagery, but you're missing so much more. You're missing shape, you're missing context, you're missing, location. You got location, but you need the, slope and aspect and all that. And so it was the first time we started to classify not just imagery, but classify multiple deep data sets to make the map. And the map accuracies really, really improved.
Mm-hmm. So then I also have to ask about ASPRS. So you both have served as president of ASPRS. And Russ, I'm interested how you got roped into doing that. And then did you rope Kass in, or how did that?
Yes, he did.
I figured. All right. So we got to hear this story.
So because of GIS 87, the conference that Northern California basically put on, we did that all under the auspices of ASPRS, but it was the first time anybody had ever done anything like that. So I actually controlled all the money, which was really, really interesting. We actually tried to hire Robin Williams as our comedian for the little banquet that we were going to have.
Oh, that would have been amazing.
But he still wanted $150,000, which was a little bit above our budget. But we ended up spending about $80,000 on a party where there was so much food and so much things to drink. And needless to say, we got a little bit in trouble because ASPRS really wanted to have that money instead of us using it to have a party. But anyway, that was on me. But we had a great time. And so, ASPRS just is an amazing organization as far as I'm concerned, and got to, be president eventually and be the workshop coordinator for about 10 years. And then finally editor-in-chief of the journal. But Kass and I always worked together. I mean, sometimes people thought we were married.
Yeah, or having affairs.
One or the other. Because we were always together at conferences.
Yeah.
And, we were always doing all these workshops together. And so in 2004, I got to be president, which was awesome because ISPRS, the international conference, is only every 4 years. And so I got to go to Istanbul for 2 weeks to be the representative for ASPRS. But amazingly, Kass got to be president in 2008 when the ISPRS conference was in Beijing. And the past president who went to the previous ISPRS conference gets to go as the advisor to the president. And so Kass and her husband, Jean, and I got to go to Beijing and be there 3 weeks before the Olympics occurred. And so that was just absolutely a fabulous time. And I think one of the photos I sent you is us at the Great Wall, which was on my birthday, which was pretty cool. So, so we love ASPRS. It's a great organization.
So then, speaking of organizations, Russ, you ended up looping Kass into AV as well. So how did Whole America View tie-in end up happening?
Yep. So 2 smartest women I've ever known in my life, Kass Green and Bobby Linkowski. And I probably need to include my wife in that.
Oh, yes. Jeannie's amazing. We love Jeannie.
She is amazing, as Chris knows. So we were looking for a new executive director for America View, and I knew Bobby really well. She was on the Sanborn Academic Advisory Council that I chaired after Sanborn and, Pacific Meridian got bought out by Space Imaging, which then that group eventually got bought out by Sanborn. So I kind of jumped to those 3 companies during that time. So anyway, I asked Bobby if she was interested in the executive director position, and she was, and everybody was fired up about that. And so I was chair of the board at that time. So I said we need to have some kind of SWOT exercise, looking at strengths and weaknesses, opportunities and threats. And we had done many of those with Pacific Meridian, and I knew Kass was a great facilitator. So we scheduled a 2-day board meeting out in just a little bit off the airport in San Francisco. And Kass came and facilitated that 2-day event so we could learn more about everything that was going on. And so she became intimately knowledgeable about America View and has been incredibly supportive of America View. And many of her keynote addresses and other important talks, she always mentions America View as an amazing organization. So she's a fan, which is great.
That's true. Big fan.
Well, I think that, we did skip an important part of ASPRS, and this is, it's been such a, pleasure to be able to talk to you guys, and an honor to know you both for so long. And Kass, we haven't known each other as long as Russ and I have, but still feel like, through these conversations, it's just been we've been able to, really, get to know you, and it's been fantastic. But, this incredible, for both of you, award that you have both been awarded in the past, and that is the William T. Pecora Award from NASA and USGS. And it's a testament to the work that you guys have done through your life's work, basically, of working in remote sensing, Earth observation, and industry and academia. And I'm wondering if you both could talk about what winning those awards meant to you, and what that has said for your career and the work and your friendship, because those things have clearly come together because of the work and your friendship and relationship over the years. So maybe just a little bit from each of you about the importance of the Pecora Award and what that's meant for you guys.
Well, for me, it was an incredible honor and probably an award I'd coveted for years. In no way did I think I'd ever be awarded the Pecora Award. And so it was such a wonderful surprise and honor. And I think, as you guys know, I've been very politically active in remote sensing. So I've sat on several federal advisory committees, and I've testified in front of Congress, and actually helped write some of the language of the 1992 Land Remote Sensing Act. So I've been very politically involved and a very strong and constant and consistent supporter of Landsat, because I think the world needs Landsat. And I continue to do that today. So for me, I think I was glad, part of the award was because of technical and scientific accomplishments, but I know that part of that award was because I'm such a vociferous advocate for Landsat data. So it was an amazing award. I still don't believe I got it. I was like, who would give me this? But it was great. Barb Ryan recommended me and kind of led the nomination, and I had helped her get nominated, a couple of years before, and she so deserved it. And so, anyway, it was just a wonderful. I thought that writing the imagery and GIS book would be the capstone of my career, but the Pecora Award definitely is.
How about you, Russ?
Sure. Well, first of all, I was super proud to watch Kass get the award. It was amazing.
He cried.
I did. And she definitely deserved it. It makes me feel like crying even just thinking about it. So, just amazing. And as much as she's politically savvy, I am absolutely not. I say what first thing goes to my brain, and usually that just
you do not do that. I've never heard you do that.
Never the department chair or anything like that, because that wouldn't work for me. So, I remember when Jack Estes was ill.
Oh, and he got the award.
And it was in near Stapleton Airport in Denver at the Pecora meeting. And a bunch of his grad students were there, and he got the award. And Jack and I weren't friends when I was at Berkeley, because Berkeley and Santa Barbara don't like each other. But as soon as I left and went to New Hampshire, Jack and I were good friends, which was interesting. But he came up to me after he got the award, and he said, "Don't worry, someday you'll get this." And I was like, "No, this is not ever happening." And so, when Kass and Bobby Lankowski, and then one of my grad students who was co-founder of Ladies of Landsat, Morgan Crowley, said they were putting together a package for me to be nominated, I was like, well, okay, but this isn't going anywhere. And so I was so surprised when Bobby called me and told me that I won the award. And it was such a special time for me. Kass came. She had a family meeting or family engagement that she has every year. And she said, I'm not going to that. She sent Jean to her family gathering and came all the way to Denver to watch me. And then all my kids came, and a bunch of America View people were there. And Tim Glenn, who was the chief operating officer for Eros at the time, came out just to give me the award. And yeah, it's definitely the highlight for me, at least in like one award for sure. I mean, I've won some other awards, but that and the honorary member for ASPRS and the Lifetime Achievement from America View, and my Graduate Mentor Award from UNH are the only ones hanging on my wall right now. All the rest of them are in boxes someplace. So, very, very special to do that. So, yeah, it's a great award. I was sad to see that it doesn't look like they didn't even give it out in 2025. So,
no, yeah, well, but it is kudos to both of you for the incredible work that you've done, and just to I hope that you guys both understand that the appreciation by the community and your friends and family for all of that work. So just I will speak for myself. I won't speak for everybody, but it's been an honor to be able to visit with you both at the same time.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, well,
it's been an honor to be interviewed by you guys. Thank you.
Yeah. Jeannie's family has a saying, what's all the fuss about?
I know.
Russ?
I know. She's allowed me to use it a couple times. So,
Well, unfortunately, I do see by the oyster-shaped clock on the wall that we are just about out of time. But Russ, Kass, I really want to thank you both for coming on today to be able to collaborate and tell your story. And not to get all mystical here on a science podcast, but sometimes fate takes a hand, via Benihana's to bring people together for a lifelong friendship like the way that you two have here with collaboration and everything that you have. But thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate you both taking the time to come on the show today.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. It was great.
And Chris, where can everybody find us online?
Well, thanks, Brad. And everybody can head on over to americaview.org if you want to check out the website. Of course, a lot of good materials there, some of it provided by Russ. And so you can, download that material and use everything there is freely available. Of course, this podcast can be found on Substack. So you go over there and search for Spatial Signals. If you're not subscribed, please do. And then, on all of our social handles at America View, including YouTube, where there's some great video content there, including some by Russ again, that's there. So you can head on over to YouTube and check out some of that content as well.
And as always, we'd like to thank our editor, Matt Wozniak, for making us sound good, and our theme music comes courtesy of Mr. Matthew Maxwell. Also, if you're listening to this podcast on a platform that allows you to leave a review, if you could do so, not only would it make us feel really good, those reviews genuinely help get this show out into the hands of other people. But we'll be back soon with another episode. So until then, I'm Brad Shellito.
I'm Chris McGinty.
And you keep watching the skies for those spatial signals out there.